Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Mihisa and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to learn how to conjugate regular verbs. So we'll be learning the basics from scratch. In this video you will learn about verbs, personal pronouns, difference in verb conjugation between French and English, and the steps involved in conjugating regular verbs. So let's get started. What are verbs? Well, they're action words or words that express the state of being. For example, walking is a word that indicates movement or motion, and sleepy describes one's mood or state of being. Verbs are divided into regular and irregular, but in this video, we shall stick to only regular verbs. Regular verbs consist of ER, RE, and IR verbs that strictly follow a certain pattern. Moving on to personal pronouns, it is written in a tabular format and is divided by a horizontal line that separates the table into singular and plural forms. And the extreme left side of the table indicates the first, second, and third person. Here we have our French personal pronouns and they are je, tu, il, elle, nous, vous, il, and elle. They're similar to the English personal pronouns, which are I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. Also note that personal pronouns are otherwise referred to as the subject. Now, let's discuss the difference between the French and English verb conjugations. So, in English, the conjugation for different personal pronouns always remains the same. For example, I speak, you speak, he speaks, she speaks, we speak, and they speak. If you look at the example, the verb to speak doesn't change much other than the S that is added to the third person singular pronoun, and that is he and she. But in French, the verb conjugation changes quite a lot. For example, taking the same verb to speak in French, that is parler, it becomes je parle, tu parles, il parle, elle parle, nous parlons, vous parlez, il parle, and elle parle. If you observe closely, there's quite a few changes in the conjugation. So in the upcoming slide, I will be teaching you how to conjugate following some simple steps. Let's look at the major steps involved in verb conjugation. Step 1. Identify the verb. Step 2. Identify the root or stem of the verb. Step 3. You have to add the endings according to the type of verb. Also note that this is a general rule and may not apply to every verb as there are exceptions. So now let's take a look at ER verbs. Here we're taking the verb chanter as an example. This translates as to sing. So let's start conjugating. Step 1 is to identify the word. Next is to identify the root or stem of the verb. So we do that by removing the letters E and R from the verb. So we are left with CHANT. And lastly, we add the endings. So for ER verbs, the designated endings are E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT, and ENT. Moving on to RE verbs, here we're taking the verb descendre as an example. This translates as to descend. So now let's start conjugating. Step 1 is to identify the verb. That's done. Next is to identify the root or stem of the verb. So we do that by removing the letters RE, in this case, from the verb. So we are left with the root or stem, that is D, E, S, C, E, N, D. And lastly, we add the designated endings for RE verbs, and that is S, nothing, ONS, EZ, ENT, and ENT. Lastly, let's look at IR verbs. Here we're taking the verb finir as an example. This translates as to finish. So let's start conjugating. Step 1 is to identify the verb. Next is to identify the root or stem of the verb, and we do that by removing the letter IR in this case. So we are left with the root or stem FIN. And lastly, we add the designated endings for IR verbs, and those are IS, IT, ISSONS, ISSEZ, ISSENT, ISSENT. Well done for making it this far into the video. I hope you found this useful. Please do like, share, and subscribe. A bientôt!